Dick Cheney's political career spanned decades, culminating in a highly influential and often controversial vice presidency under George W. Bush, where he significantly reshaped the scope of executive power and national security policy. His actions and philosophy continue to spark intense debate about presidential authority, wartime decisions, and the balance of governmental branches. Dick Cheney. The name alone often conjures a specific image. A powerful, often inscrutable figure. A man whose influence behind the scenes was as profound as his public pronouncements were infrequent. For nearly 4 decades, Cheney was at the epicenter of American political life, serving in various capacities from White House Chief of Staff to Secretary of Defense, before ultimately ascending to the vice presidency, a role he redefined with unprecedented authority. His tenure, particularly during the tumultuous years following 9/11, cemented his status as one of the most consequential and simultaneously polarizing figures in modern American history. To understand the trajectory of late 20th and early 21st century American governance, one must grapple with the indelible mark left by Dick Cheney, a man whose steadfast convictions and strategic acumen shaped policy and perception alike. The quiet ascent, from Wyoming to Washington's inner circle. Born in Lincoln, Nebraska, but raised primarily in Casper, Wyoming, Dick Cheney's journey to the pinnacle of power was anything but conventional. After attending Yale and the University of Wyoming, his political career began in earnest in the late 1960s, a period of significant social and political upheaval. He quickly found his footing in Washington, D.C., joining the staff of Congressman William A. Steiger, and soon after, working for Donald Rumsfeld at the Office of Economic Opportunity. This early mentorship proved crucial, as Rumsfeld would later bring Cheney into the Ford administration, where, at just 34 years old, he became the youngest White House Chief of Staff in history. This pivotal role during a period of national healing post-Watergate offered Cheney an unparalleled vantage point into the mechanics of presidential power and the intricacies of federal governance. His experience in the executive branch provided a robust foundation for his subsequent electoral career. Returning to Wyoming, Cheney successfully ran for the state's sole House of Representatives seat in 1978, a position he would hold for 10 years. During his decade in Congress, he cultivated a reputation as a conservative stalwart, known for his fiscal discipline and strong defense posture. He rose through the ranks, eventually becoming the House Minority Whip, demonstrating an innate ability to navigate legislative complexities and command respect across the aisle. This blend of executive experience and legislative leadership positioned him perfectly for future high-level appointments, shaping defense policy, Secretary of Defense and beyond. In 1989, President George H.W. Bush tapped Dick Cheney to serve as his Secretary of Defense, a role that would further solidify his credentials as a formidable national security strategist. His tenure coincided with a period of profound global transformation: the fall of the Berlin Wall, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the end of the Cold War. Cheney was instrumental in guiding the Pentagon through this seismic shift, overseeing significant military restructuring and budget reallocations as the nation transitioned from a bipolar world order. However, his most defining moment as Defense Secretary came with the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in 1990. Cheney played a central role in orchestrating Operation Desert Shield and subsequently Operation Desert Storm, the swift and decisive military campaign that liberated Kuwait. His steady leadership during this crisis, working closely with Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Colin Powell, earned him widespread praise and demonstrated his capacity to manage complex geopolitical challenges under immense pressure. This period not only showcased his strategic acumen but also forged a deep understanding of military operations and the projection of American power abroad, insights that would profoundly influence his later vice presidency. After leaving the Pentagon in 1993, Cheney transitioned to the private sector, serving as chairman and CEO of Halliburton Company, a multinational oilfield services corporation. His time in the corporate world, while financially lucrative, also drew scrutiny, particularly regarding contracts awarded during his subsequent political career. Nevertheless, his diverse experience across all three branches of government and the private sector made him an exceptionally well-rounded, albeit controversial political figure. When George W. Bush sought a running mate for the 2000 presidential election, the vice presidency, an unprecedented expansion of power. When George W. Bush selected Dick Cheney as his vice presidential candidate, many saw it as a move to add gravitas and experience to a ticket led by a relatively young governor. Few, however, anticipated the revolutionary transformation Cheney would bring to the office itself. From the outset, Cheney envisioned a vice presidency far more engaged and influential than any before it. He took on an unprecedented portfolio, particularly in areas of national security, foreign policy, and energy. The attacks of September 11, 2001, irrevocably altered the landscape of American governance and, crucially, amplified Cheney's role. In the immediate aftermath, as President Bush was shuttled to secure locations, Cheney remained in Washington, D.C., effectively serving as a central command point, coordinating the national response from the White House bunker. This moment set the tone for his vice presidency, a figure deeply embedded in decision-making, often operating with a degree of autonomy and authority rarely seen in the second highest office. He became a principal architect of modern executive power, advocating for a robust interpretation of presidential authority, especially during wartime. Cheney was a leading voice in the administration's response to terrorism, championing aggressive measures that included the invasion of Afghanistan, the subsequent invasion of Iraq, and the implementation of enhanced interrogation techniques. He was a staunch unitary executive theory proponent, a legal philosophy asserting that the president possesses ultimate authority over the executive branch, with limited congressional or judicial oversight, particularly in matters of national security. This theory underpinned many of the administration's most contentious policies, from warrantless surveillance programs to the use of military commissions for terror suspects. His influence was pervasive, from shaping intelligence assessments to crafting legal justifications for the war on terror, making him arguably the most powerful vice president in American history. Legacy and lingering questions. Dick Cheney's 8 years as vice president left an indelible mark on American domestic and foreign policy, creating an enduring geopolitical legacy that continues to be debated and dissected. His supporters laud him as a decisive leader who protected the nation in a time of existential threat. A man of unwavering principle who made tough choices necessary for national security. They point to the absence of further major attacks on U.S. soil after 9/11 as evidence of the effectiveness of the policies he championed. However, his critics view his tenure through a far more skeptical lens. They argue that his expansive interpretation of executive power eroded checks and balances, compromised civil liberties, and led the nation into a costly and ultimately destabilizing war in Iraq based on flawed intelligence. The controversies surrounding enhanced interrogation, surveillance, and the legal framework of the war on terror remain potent points of contention, challenging the very definition of American values and legal norms. His post-vice presidency years have seen him remain an active, albeit less public, commentator, often defending his actions and policies with the same conviction that defined his time in office. In the final analysis, Dick Cheney remains a figure of profound complexity and contradiction. He was a master of political strategy, a seasoned veteran of Washington's corridors of power, and an individual whose convictions shaped the destiny of a nation during a critical juncture. His impact on the role of the vice presidency, the scope of executive authority, and the direction of American foreign policy is undeniable. Whether he is remembered as a steadfast patriot who safeguarded the nation or as an overreaching official who undermined democratic principles largely depends on one's perspective and the passage of historical time. What, then, is the ultimate verdict on Dick Cheney's extraordinary career and the profound imprint he left on American governance? And how do you believe his actions have shaped the nation we live in today?